So this is actually a good segue into this conversation about open source, because we over the last 2 releases, if you actually pull up Stackalytics and OpenStack and look at over the last 2 milestone releases where a lot of the quantum, or rather neutron contributions are coming from, they're actually coming from our group. So we have a neutron-based cloud network running at scale today. The HP Cloud runs on a neutron-based network. It took us superhuman effort to get that to work.
I believe that.
And
congratulations.
Yeah, so thank you. But we're actually actively pushing changes, all those changes out to stabilize neutron, because in our view, it makes no sense for us to be riding on a stable stream of code while the community sort of struggles and limps along, and they get to 55 nodes and they fall over.
Well, it's not just that. The moment you diverge,
yeah, I'm taking on technical debt. I agree with you. So I think OpenStack, another area where we are very active. You haven't seen us much on the networking side. As HP, our contributions have been very heavy in places like Nova and OOO and some of the orchestration frameworks. We are ramping up sort of a huge set of contributions into networking. So one of the first things you'll see coming from us in the next release is we're going to be open sourcing our distributed virtual routing DVR capability.
Where are you doing that in the whole OpenStack end-to-end architecture? Where do you do routing?
So the goal of doing this is to relieve the network node, that network node that does all the L3 stuff.
But do you plan to do routing on the top of rack switches or in OVS?
In OVS.
Yay.
Yeah. So, and in fact, it's distributed virtual routing. We're actually going to be distributing that routing function across all the compute nodes. Of course. Across all the compute nodes. And this is a solution that I think several vendors have already as part of their sort of controller frameworks. However, there isn't one available in the open source domain for.
That's right.
Yes. Enough said. No, but no, you're right. Contrail's got it. But we're going to be making it part of sort of stock OpenStack. We've been working with the community to push that out. The other one that we've been working on for a couple of releases now is a framework for VPN as a service. So both sort of a pluggable framework as well as a reference implementation based on OpenSwan. That we're contributing. We're also going to be, I already mentioned all the framework improvements we're making, going right back in. So the goal is to get the community, the Neutron community, caught up to HP, and then at that point, we sort of go on this trip together. It doesn't excuse the fact that Neutron APIs probably still need to evolve a little, a lot. The fact that you need to know VLAN and VXLAN details to be able to plumb anything down there is a criminal. But
yes.
But we're I think we'll make some good strides there. So do you guys have any questions about OpenStack at all, or OpenStack networking? Yeah.
So you want to go deep into what you do with OpenStack networking?
Do I want to?
Yeah. I mean, you're willing to tell us what you're doing in your OpenStack implementation?
To an extent, I can. Yeah, to an extent, like.
Okay, so the first question would be, obviously, you're not using VLANs, right?
We're not using VLANs. You mean VLANs versus VXLANs?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it will support VXLANs.
So it is all overlay based?
For OpenStack, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Are you're trying to exclude .1Q from the equation whatsoever?
The problem is scalability. You have 4,000 VLANs. Hopefully he has more than 4,000 customers.
Presumably, yeah.
Well, so that actually brings up a very interesting point, because our commitment to OpenStack is outside of just our public cloud, right? We're actually taking all our private cloud products, and it's a big business for us. We're a server vendor, we have blade servers, all of that stuff, and they're all being migrated to OpenStack. So there is actually a fairly large segment of our customer base for whom VLANs are just fine, right? 4,000 VLANs, just fine. And in fact, what we're going to be putting into the community is really sort of a second generation release of a product we already have out there, right? So we've already done the virtual networking stack for OpenStack for a product HP has called Cloud System. The shipping version today supports VLAN, but it adds things like HA and robustness and whatnot that isn't in stock Neutron. And what we're doing is we're taking all of that stuff. We'll be adding DVR, VPN as a service, VXLAN, and just pushing all of that out into the community. And so that'll not only will that become the basis for our own products, but it'll hopefully be sort of the go forward for the community as well.
So let's say in both your product and what you're contributing back, you're still relying on Open vSwitch?
We can do for relying on Open vSwitch versus Linux Bridge. Is that the question?
Yeah.
So I think for the approach we've taken, you can use either or.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll support Linux Bridge, and I think part of that is for historical reasons. Our own implementation is Linux Bridge based. So
for VLANs, that's good enough.
Yeah. So we're actually pretty excited for the summit coming up. We'll have a lot of conversations there, and going forward, we're going to be making a lot more contributions into the networking track. And we talked a little bit about group-based policy. Group-based policy has an ODL component, and it's got an OpenStack component. The OpenStack component is not moving as fast, but as sort of a consumer of SDN controller services, that's actually another place where we hope to make a lot of contributions. So there's OpenStack. Some of the other sort of open projects near and dear to our hearts. I'll say Open Daylight and see what facial expressions I get from the room. But again, I think it's a very important project for the SDN community, right? We were founding members of Daylight. We haven't, we weren't huge contributors in the first phase, but we have been very involved with the discussions there, and especially in some of the more important projects like OVSDB, MDSAL, Deluxe, right? A lot of these have sort of HP fingerprints on them.
But you scaled back your engagement more recently.
Scaled back?
Yeah,
Not
that's
so
what they're
much.
telling me. But
Not so much. So I would say, our engagement in Open Daylight has been commensurate with our commitment, our commitment to the foundation. So we came in not at the platinum level, promising to put 10 people on right away and developing it, mostly because at the time, it wasn't apparent to us that that's what we needed to do. We already had controller development in flight, and we couldn't disrupt those programs.
The controller is quite advanced.
Yeah.
It's doing well for you.
Exactly, so I would say, just because it's open source doesn't mean it's open season on your on the commitments you make to a community, and so we didn't sign up. We didn't sign up to do more than we were ready to.
Yeah.
So, I think you'll see us more involved now, especially as sort of the community's definitely found its legs, right? The project definitely has traction. It's still, I think by their own admission, it's still a little bit of a science project, right? And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
It came together very, very quickly, but we expect good things from it. It's gotten a lot of good press here, right? It swept the awards last night.
Yeah, I think that I have a contrarian view to some of the other people, but I think Open Daylight is the third controller. There's only three, and I think ODL will be the.
What are the other two?
NSX and ACI.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they will be for the foreseeable future. That doesn't mean that there's not a market for other controllers as some smaller percentage of the overall, but they will be the three dominant. Open Daylight's dominance, I think, will be led in the NFE space, not necessarily in the enterprise space. Okay, so carriers like AT&T, Verizon, Ericsson, Alcatel-Lucent, they're driving ODL because they see it as service providers because it can be the only place they can all converge. But if you can prove it out in the carrier space, then it becomes, if they can make it work at scale for that, then that can come down into the enterprise as a proven product, not coming from unproven into the enterprise. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Although if you look at who signed up to commercialize ODL, there's 4 vendors who are going to build ODL-based controllers, and there's at least 3 entities that are going to do ODL distributions. I would say that their aspirations are to make a run for the enterprise as well in the short term.
No, yeah. I think that eventually the market driver won't be the enterprise itself because it won't adopt a controller that doesn't have an imprimatur from Amazon or Google or Facebook or it has to prove itself somewhere. And I think the carriers have a lot more motivation to look for more openness, and ODL gives them that. The drive for open source in the service provider space is significant.
It's not just openness, although I agree with you. Once I agree with you, it's also the profit
Someone wants
margins.
a diamond date.
Yeah.
The room's going to sink into the ground.
When I say open, I mean free. You can't beat free. Yeah. But open is about freedom. They can control it. They can take the product and direct it, add to it, subtract. Yes. That's my current reading, is that I think NFE, OpenStack and NFE with Open Daylight is going to be far more, is going to drive the next phase. And then at some point in the future, the enterprise. I think the people involved in ODL are all enterprise-centric, not service provider-centric, and I think that focus will shift once the use cases become driven by service provider markets. I'm a bit further forward-looking than.
I can definitely see that happening. We have we recently announced that we're setting up a dedicated sort of NFV business line, and again, the SDN sort of our SDN assets come to play very nicely in that space as well. So using SDN to orchestrate NFV, right, could actually be one of those use cases that really leapfrogs even sort of mass market enterprise adoption. And part of that is mostly just the dynamics, right? I mean, the carriers aren't just talking about it; they're willing to start spending money this year on these
On NFV.
on NFE. Exactly.
That was the key trigger for me that led me to sort of say there's more in service provider space than the enterprise for SDN.
Yeah.
And when you start seeing the AT&T people stand up in a conference and say, no, we've actually spent this much money on these technologies, and we have this many people working on evaluating how we've, it's kind of like, hang on, this isn't just making noise to get a discount. This is far beyond.
Yeah. And to some extent, it's them firing a shot across the bow at the vendors, right? Yeah.
A shallow, we might leave. Yeah. It's a real, there's serious commitment to or appears to be at least. Yeah.
What's interesting though is that even for, especially for service providers, open source is somewhat nebulous, right? They're stepping into it. They're still trying to figure out how this works. What are the motivations of all the people here? And I think it'll probably take a few more months for some of that to settle down. It'll take 1 or 2 service providers to sort of raise their hands and say, yes, we're in, and this is what we're doing for it. They've done that with OpenStack, right? I mean, OpenStack, for all the bricks you can throw at it, in terms of code quality and whatnot.
The difference between OpenStack and a corporate product is that the corporate product, you don't see the messiness happening. Yeah. It's all hidden behind closed doors. OpenStack, it's all happening in public. And people seem to mistake the two. Right?
Yeah. It's if someone could see how software and hardware development gets done inside a big company.
OpenStack wouldn't look nearly as scary.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, but people don't like to eat sausages after they've seen it.
But it doesn't stop us from eating
I
bacon.
would just make a comment on
We don't watch how they make
what
bacon.
you said, that service providers are slowly testing the open source waters. We all think that networking is all that matters. Service providers have been using open source for the last 15 years. Just take a look at whenever they offer web services. It's Linux plus Apache plus MySQL. It's all open source. Whenever they offer anything else, they're always trying to go for open source because it's the cheapest option.
Yeah.
And they have the capability and the economies of scale to build. So they can employ 20 people to play with until they get it right, which an enterprise can't. So it's just, extending those same ideas to networking. It's nothing new for them.
Yeah.
It's just us thinking that networking is special. Which
It
is.
is special.
It is.
It is special.